in a couple of weeks. Hey everyone, we're here. We're talking about Languid coming to Japan, and the Verucas doing their first, not their first ever show, but rural Canada, maybe.
Potentially.
Maybe. That'll be a good show. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. It's Friday again. What are you listening to? 108. Talking of straight edge and stuff as we were. We're on episode 108. It's going to be a great show. Thanks for tuning in. Let's do the housekeeping. I've done that for a while. The order, kind of like almost a discharge-ish font. What's going on there?
Very nice.
Kind of.
I wondered if that was intentional.
I don't know. It's called something like marker pen or something.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That. I don't know. Yeah. All right. That's out of the way. Like and subscribe. We're almost at 2,500, so help us out to get there.
We'll put you over the top tonight.
Put me over the top. That'll be great. All right. It's going to be a great show. Steve's back. Steven's back. Hazel's back. Matt's back. Good to see everyone. How you all doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having us back.
Doing good.
Yeah.
I've done shows with both of these fine co-hosts, so I know they have an impeccable taste in music. Looking forward to their picks tonight.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be a fun episode. For anyone tuning in for the first time, what we do, we've each got 5 records we're going to have a good time talking about. We're just passionate fans. We're not professional music critics. We might make mistakes. The donuts. Or you might be disappointed, Daniel. Well, let's see what happens. But yeah, we've got 5 records each, and I've actually got exactly 5. I have no props or lead-ins.
What?
Or anything. I might have actually. I don't think I'm going to do it, but if the chance arises, then I have the ability to do it. But I'm hoping that I won't do it. All right, shall we get started? There we go.
Let it rip.
Yeah, let it go. Let it rip. So last Friday, I started off with a compilation album. I always feel like compilation albums are a little tough to talk about, especially if there's a lot of bands on them. But I'm going in with another compilation as my first pick again this week. This one's kind of easier to talk about for me than last week. Last week I talked about the Charred Remains comp, which has a lot of bands on it.
Oh yeah,
and it's a classic compilation. Maybe it's a classic compilation. But this one, I'm kind of more familiar with this one. I've lived with this one since 1991, so I've lived with it. I'm really familiar with it. It's Japanese, 1991, came out on Bloodsucker Records. I was listening to it last night, and it had to go in the pile because I was excited listening to it last night, as I always am. I haven't listened to it for a while. Any guesses? 1991, Bloodsucker Records, Japan, 6 bands, 6-band compilation. Great Sugi artwork on the cover.
Starving Dog Eats Master. Very nice.
Starving Dog eats Master. Before we get into like the band, I want to obviously the first thing you see with this record, and I was, blown away when I first is the artwork. It's just so, memorable. I don't know really what's going on. It's like this Japanese guy sewing up the woman, sewing her stitches up or something on her forehead. But it looks like a painting. It is a painting, but it looks like it's been taken from somewhere, and like an older Japanese painting, sort of like just put on the cover. But it's actually a Sugi original.
It's not exactly characteristic of his style either. I was
going to get to that because I kind of think, obviously, he's an amazing artist. That's not up for debate. But I do think he's kind of fallen into a certain style that it's getting quite predictable, like what he's going to do. It's the demon, the band's written the handwritten font in big letters. It always looks really, really cool. But this is definitely before he started doing that style on kind of almost every record that's.
Yeah, this almost looks like a still from like a Takashi Miike movie or something.
It does. I always thought it was a painting, an older painting, but it says Sugi like right here at the bottom, actually, in big letters. But yeah, it was funny because actually one of the reasons I pulled this out, because we were talking about Death Side the other day, And someone said, "Oh, that they're on so many like compilations over the years, but actually they're not on that many actually." But it seems like, and I said, "Well," and they're usually like the best band, like on every compilation that they're on, they're usually the best band, and like people immediately sort of disagree with me, which that's cool. But I think they are the best band on this one, though. Like definitely.
Yeah. I mean, how are you on top Death Side? Seriously,
It's hard, but like at least on this one they put them at the end. So it's like when they're at the beginning, it's kind of tough because every other band has to sort of come afterwards, and it's a little bit. I know they have such a thing going on; it's kind of hard to follow. But this one, you got Kruk, who were amazing. Like Kruk, along with Judgment, are one Japanese band that desperately needs a discography collection. I'll take a CD. I'll take anything. I mean, they've only got they've got compilation tracks and a tape, I think, but.
Yeah, I remember Todd Burdett talking about that band, like one of his favorites. Like,
it was going to happen at one point, I think,
yeah.
But it just didn't happen. But desperately needed. Of course, like the vocalist went on to be in Judgment, like down the line. And then you've got Bandit. I always loved Bandit. I saw them a couple of times. They're from Kita Kyushu, influenced by Lip Cream. And even their name comes from a Lip Cream song. But so the drummer of that band ended up being a singer in I, like later on down the line. They're a great band. Warhead Junk, they're okay. The guitarist was Soichi from Forward back in the day. He played guitar on these tracks. And I think they had a split with Gudon as well in the same year.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in this comp. And then Nightmare come in, like
legendary,
like local heroes from Osaka. 3 songs. One song is a remake of a song from the first LP, which isn't quite as good as the version on the first LP, but still amazing. Kathabuta had a double flexi disc, the best format of all, out on Bloodsucker Records around this time too. Decent band from Hiroshima. The bassist went on to be in Origin of M, like later on, with Guy from Bloodsucker Records. And then Death Side, like right at the end, with 4 songs. I mean, what a way to like finish off a compilation. But
it's a stacked comp.
It's a stack comp, but it's funny though because this actually this came out in 1991, right? And Bet on the Possibility also came out in 91, but it's so different, right? Like the tracks on this and those tracks, and I think these are really fresh recordings. Whereas Bet on the Possibility, they were in the studio for like 2 years, 3 years. They'd already kind of got tired of like that like progressive elements. They went like right back to basics after that, right? And just were ferocious in the sort of the last part of their career in the 90s. Like all the stuff is ferocious in the last part of Death Side's career. They weren't messing about. The split with Chaos UK, like the 2 7-inches. It's like it's unbeatable, really.
I love that split. That's great stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think this compilation is as sort of revered as like some of the ones from the 80s on Selfish Records and stuff, but it's definitely for like the late era of like the second wave of Japanese hardcore. This is probably like the best compilation from the early 90s, I would say.
Yeah, definitely deserves to be right up there. And I think, like I know you've been talking about comps a lot, and I've been listening to a lot of comps lately too. And I always thought the Japanese always really did it well. Like when they pick just like 4 or 6 bands and like have each band contribute a few songs, you just got like this really nice continuity to the record. I always felt like comps like that, like, unfortunately get overlooked, but like there's some really, really great solid records there.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of other bands, like the Japanese were never ones who would just be throwing away like B-sides or like weird covers of like ABBA songs or something. They're like, no, we're still giving you like A+ tracks here. This isn't just the stuff that wasn't good enough for other releases.
I think so.
I think that makes a big difference too. So.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. If you listen to that Death Side like compilation and singles album, it's like, man, they put some of their best songs on like compilation albums.
Fire.
Like, it's wild. I think
that's actually something.
That's
something I downloaded off Napster back in my college days, the full Death Side discography. Only way I ever heard that in my early 20s.
I think I always want to say it's like almost sort of out of respect for the label as well. It's like, and it's not a competition, but I do think there's a bit of rivalry and like between the bands. So like they don't want to be like the weakest band on the compilation. I do think that's a thing here. And they give it like 100%. Even on compilations. So.
Yeah, it's great. We all benefit.
it's a win-win situation for everybody, right? Yeah, just a classic amongst a sea of classics from Japan in the 80s and early 90s. So
Yeah, it's a great pick. It's actually one I'm still missing. It's a good reminder.
Yeah.
I need to pick that up.
Me too. Yeah, I need one too. That Bloodsucker was an interesting label. I mean, there's a ton of stuff on that label that's dollar bin. That's so cheap. That is fantastic.
yes,
You know, like they put out just some killer 7-inches that are worth pennies. And so, you know, great label to, you know, see go on Discogs or go on, you know, go some, you know, record store and just look like, oh, yep, Bloodsucker, cool, you know, buy 10 singles for $10 or something like that, and you're bound to, you're bound to have something knock it out of the park. It's
a lot of like CD only and like mini, like what do you call those things? Like they're CDs, but they're not albums. They're like CD singles or like
like the tiny one.
Yeah, not those, but like just a CD, but it's only got 4 tracks on it. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, CD EP, I think they're called. Yeah. A lot of those. Great label. So that's my first pick.
I'm a big fan of those comps where bands contribute more than one song because it really gives you the opportunity to hear more of their stuff, and it feels impressive.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot too. It's very different than, you know, what we get typically in North America. You know, it's one song per band and 20 bands or something like that. You know, I quite like, you know, like an EP's worth of songs on a comp and only you know 4 to 6 bands. I think it's a, you know, pretty cool way to do it.
Yeah, I think for the listener, I prefer this style, but I suppose when you're trying to sort of document like a local scene or something, you kind of want to get like every band, you know, on there, or that happens to, I guess. But yeah, I much prefer like 4 or 6 bands, or even 8. You know.
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
See, this is how we're gonna get your likes up through the roof, right there. Like and subscribe for more cute dogs.
Yes, like the dog.
Rowdy Roddy Popper.
All right, Stephen, what's your first pick of the day? What you got?
Well, I'm going to pull the classic Mike move and talk about a record first to introduce the record that I'm talking about. So even though you're abstaining, I'm not going to. Speaking of comps, and I mentioned this in the group the other day, you know, I have been listening to a lot of comps lately, and one was this Me City Hardcore 2 on MCR. And this is a great little record. It's 3 bands. You get 2 to 3 songs from each. It's Contrast Attitude. I think this is their first vinyl appearance ever. It's this band called Alive, who I think this is the only thing they ever did. And it's the drummer went on to play with Fedora. And then it's Deceiving Society, who is another Crasher Crust band from that era. And so there's one of these bands today that I really want to focus on. And it's getting a little warm in here.
I knew it. I could tell.
There we go. Everyone read that. It's my
Deceiving Society. Detonation. Was it Cruster or something? Detonation Cruster.
Detonation Cruster by Deceiving Society. Their one and only LP. This was a pretty short-lived band, I think. All they did was a demo tape, this LP, and then the 2 comp tracks, which are actually just re-recordings of demo songs. So yeah, from best I can tell, they're active from 2000 to 2004, but they were definitely part of that whole kind of like second wave Crasher Crust. This was the 9th release on Crust Roar Records, so it's like sandwiched between 2 Fronted releases. They were like right there. You know, it's like perfect Gloom worship. You know, like these guys understood what Gloom was doing, and we're like, okay, yeah, we could do a record of that for sure. And it's just so ferocious right off the bat, like wheeling waves of like guitar noise, and then like the rapid fire snare, the bass drops in. Like I play bass in Nightfall, and I honestly steal a lot of stuff from the way this guy plays, because he's just like sliding all over the place and just like beating the fuck out of his bass strings. It just sounds so mean. So yeah, I felt like I went from the comp to this. I've been listening to a lot this week. I'm like, I got to talk about it on the show now. And I got to wear it on the show as well, because I know my fans were disappointed I didn't do any costume changes last week.
Wow, yeah, that people were pretty happy about that record when it came out. It's like the slightly younger generation of kids carrying on the tradition of like Gloom, you know, kind of thing. But
Mike, do you know if these guys ever went on to do anything else? Like I couldn't find anything in my search, but
just thinking about the location, and I think I mentioned this, but it's funny because there isn't, like you mentioned, the Mie City compilation. There is no city called Mie, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, was it more like a precinct or something?
It's a prefecture, like a state.
Okay.
It's kind of fun. There's a few of those in that series that are actually not cities, but yeah, thinking about, I don't know, I'm not sure. I mean, Mie doesn't have a massive, I guess, like acrostics from that area too.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, they just split with contrast attitudes. So.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, I'm not sure actually, but
I've got volume 1 of that comp. I don't have volume 2.
Yeah, it's funny. I have volume 2, but not volume 1. But volume 2 is great if you love Crasher Crust. It's just 3 very noisy bands doing the best. And one thing I got to say about this record too is, and I always get shit for this opinion, but the snare sound on this record is very controversial. It sounds like he's just like hitting a paper plate almost. It's like it stands out, and it just, to me, it just adds to the chaos of everything. It's like I can't imagine it without it. But everyone's like, oh, I wish they'd, it's like the Saint Anger of Crasher Crust records. It's like I've heard people be like, if only they fixed the snare, that record would be perfect. But I'm like, no, the snare is perfect. You don't understand. You're not seeing the vision.
Is that snare sound on the comp as well, or only on that LP?
I feel like it's most pronounced on the LP, but I mean, yeah, it is definitely part of their sound. So, yeah, for all I know, it could be from the same session.
There's a whole bunch of those bands that. Oh God, what's the name of that? Unwise. Do you know that band?
Unwise? No, I haven't heard that one.
They're great.
But I forget which is which. They have an LP on Vinyl Japan, Discipline, and they have like two 7-inches, and I forget which one. Either it's one of the 7-inches or either the LP. One of them is considered like a classic in that sort of gloom, like super blown out.
It's the 7-inch where the cartoon character is given,
nice.
There
you go. Yeah, that, and then people were like disappointed by the LP because it's like it's too nice or too clean. But I mean, it's not. But compared to that 7-inch,
Get Lost.
Definitely.
I think it's called Get Lost.
Yes, that's it.
Sound right?
Yeah.
That's not an accusation that'll ever be levied at Deceiving Society. Maybe they just broke up before they released a clean record. They're like, we'll just release the noisiest shit ever and then peace out. I really love the artwork too. I have a really fond spot.
It's actually like a pretty good
really
take on the style, right? It's actually done pretty well.
Yeah, it's like kind of that style that I feel like Gloom kind of pioneered on some of the early EPs.
Right.
But the
I really like that Grim Reaper in the study.
I know, right?
That's such a good touch.
It's a good look. And honestly, too, I mean, it's a different style, but I really love the cover of this record. It's like fucking the Howling Crusties at the Gates of Hell. Like, it's just so tough.
A TUFF.
Yes. So you can get as a knuckle tattoo.
All right, man. 2 Japanese records to kick off with. How about that? Yeah. All right, Hazel, what's your first?
No Japanese records for me for now. We're gonna switch it up a little bit. So I have a whole pile of bonus records to tell stories with and whatnot. But I'm doing a theme show tonight.
Ooh, yeah, that's right. I'm
And
excited to see.
The theme is firsts. So there's going to be some lore deep dives and other interesting things.
Oh.
And first of the night, first records I bought in 2025. One of the questions that comes up at band practice a lot, or one of the topics that just keeps going around and around, is like, what do we actually sound like? And of course, unsurprisingly, because I'm on this show, I'm always the one who has like a million comparisons for everything. And so I keep bringing up a lot of like 90s European crust bands that some of my bandmates have heard, some have not. And I've been tracking down like more of these records because of that. So I went on Discogs and I grabbed this Hibernation 7-inch. I don't know how to pronounce the name in Greek. I ran out of time. But I saw this and bought it. And while I was at it, of course, I got to look at the seller's cart and see if they have anything else I want.
Oh, yeah. A dangerous game.
Brings us to Sweden because they had something in the cart that was a Swedish band that I had like not heard, but I remember reading about. And so I listened to it. I'm like, maybe I want this. I listened to it and immediately decided I did want it. And musically, it's different direction. It's the Tristesse Barra Rock and Roll EP.
Oh, yeah.
Members of like a million other bands, I think Regulations and like a pile of other bands doing like ultra catchy, sing along, like danceable, fist pumping, just rock and roll bangers. Super good, like record that puts you in a good mood. And they've got some of that like cool Scandinavian melody sense to them that like a lot of bands from that region have. So it sounds rock and roll but Swedish basically, and like I loved it. Now I'm going to track down the rest of the records, and like it was super fun for me because it came out in 2006. So I like knew about it but didn't hear it until 19 years later, and that's one of the things that's so fun about Punkin' Records is there's so much that you can hear something for the first time like 19 years after it comes out and have like a new favorite band. So I'm really hooked on this. Good purchase. Recommended.
Oh, yeah. That's a great score.
I picked up their I want to say second LP because I think the first one was on maybe came out on Deranged.
Okay.
In Canada. The second one was on like Kick and Punch, maybe
All right.
or Nivage or some label that we didn't get great distribution in Canada. And I picked up that second LP for like $5 from Sit and Spin on their Boxing Day sale. Yeah, I've got that 7-inch. I got both their LPs. Those guys rule. I love that scene.
Yeah.
Regulations. That stuff just kicks ass.
Yeah, I loved like a lot of those bands at the time, but just happened to miss out on this one.
We tried to book the Regulations at last minute here in town one time, and it didn't happen, sadly. So I never got to see them. It's that tour they did with Felix Havoc. He was like their merch guy for a tour across Canada and maybe the States. Sadly didn't work out.
That sounds right up my alley, actually, from the way you described it. Hey,
Hi, Clifford.
How you doing?
Yeah, that was definitely one of those records that I remember seeing in like every distro in that like the 2006 time period. And then, I think I finally ended up picking it up years later. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Not quite 19 years later, but yeah, probably not right. When you're at like, standing in the church at like a sweaty basement show and digging through those record boxes with the flickering lights overhead, you got to be really decisive with your picks. You can't linger too long.
Let me know if you want to do that. I've got a bunch of those boxes.
Nice. Recreate those old memories, yeah.
Nice. Tristesse. From Sweden. There you go.
So that was the first record you bought in 2025?
Both of these. I bought them from the same seller at the same time.
Nice. Yeah, the Hibernation record's great too. Like just good classic Greek crust.
Yeah, I've got the LP, I think. The Hibernation.
Yeah, I don't know them. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah. If you like crust, I think you'll enjoy it.
I've been known to enjoy a bit of that.
Yeah. Probably more so than Mike.
Well, perhaps, I don't know. All right. Matt, what's your first pick?
This one totally changes it up. Like this is nothing like those first three records.
Cool.
So this is a movie score.
Ooh.
It is the movie score that got me into movie scores.
Oh.
This is the movie score that got me to start seeking out scores on vinyl. It got me into collecting horror scores, and then of course that broadened into synthwave and all sorts of other crazy, electronic stuff. But this one is the king of them all for me. This is the one that really, really kind of flipped that switch in my brain, and made me start paying more attention. And apparently, it is the loudest movie score ever put to a movie. I guess the volume of it in this movie is louder than any other score in the backing of any movie. And this one is Suspiria by So this is like a early 2000s press on Dagord. Kind of an ugly cover. But
wow.
This thing still blows my mind. There's so much that kind of has come out of that score. There's basically an entire scene devoted to trying to sound like Goblin Suspiria. Bands like Zombie and that kind of stuff, Carpenter Brute, and all this really cool synthwave. There's tons of guys out there recording kind of fake movie scores now that just put out albums that are they look like an old VHS cover and they kind of try to be a score. But this thing just absolutely blows my mind still, 20, like 50 years later.
Yeah.
This thing, I discovered that probably when I was 15, 16. Probably downloaded Suspiria from LimeWire, Kazaa, or something like we were talking about earlier. yeah, it's not very punk, and they're certainly not the first band to do a synthesizer type thing. I mean, Kraftwerk, and all sorts of stuff at the time. But they just did something very special with it,
Absolutely.
thing together that creates, fear, creates emotion, creates, this crazy feeling, and that it's nuts that it's not completely instrumental, but instrumental music can still make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and it doesn't have to be aggro or whatever. It can be this weird, Italo disco synth stuff,
because they do get a little funky sometimes. Not maybe.
Oh yeah.
But it totally works. It's beautiful. I love it.
I'm not I'm not into disco. Like, I don't give a fuck about disco even a least bit. But I'll buy a Goblin record of it. Like that's
There is something about what they did. It is special. I've got that record. I wish I had it to show it because it's a beautiful. Like, I'll show
a
it
nicer
to you.
one.
Japanese, just Japanese pressing. Yeah, but there's 7-inch singles too in Japan. Maybe. With picture sleeve singles of a couple of tracks from that record, and I think they were quite popular here. And there's what's the second one called? Like Suspiria 2.
Roller.
It's Roll, and then there's like another one which has different names in different countries. It gets like a little bit confusing.
Well, I mean, there's Zombie, Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, we'll probably talk about it after the show. Like, I wish I could bring them out. And,
I dare you.
I'd have to stand up and go to the next one. You don't want to see that, but absolute classic.
I argue, though, I think it is punk, at least honorary, because Concrete Socks and Effigy both sampled stuff off of it, so it connects.
They did.
Also, Germ Attack.
Oh,
Germ Attack on their last 12-inch, the guitar lead and Fear of the Unknown, I think was the name of the album. I think it was the title track. The guitar lead is actually the Suspiria riff.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Oh, Inferno. Yeah. Thanks, Grant.
You're on it.
That was Suspiria 2 in some countries, wasn't it?
Rosso something.
Profundo Rosso.
Profundo Rosso.
That's it. Yes.
Deep Red.
That's yes.
Yes. Sir. I've seen a bunch of these because my sister is really into this kind of stuff. So like they're good. I'm not like a super movie expert, but I do enjoy these.
Is there any singing? I don't remember any singing on any of these early Goblin.
Suspiria does have some. I mean, it's not singing. It's not like there's like kind of this weird chanting thing that goes on over the main theme. La 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 la. It's not singing per se, but
classic.
Yeah, but that kicked off a whole thing for me. I've got too many horror movie scores and that kind of stuff. But
yeah, it's a great one. I could
this
totally
was the
see
one
how that
really kind of flicked that switch for me.
Yeah,
I own maybe a dozen soundtrack records, and that's definitely one of them. Like, really top tier stuff right there.
Yeah, I might be able to. I think this might be a first for me, sticking with the firsts theme that Hazel's got tonight. I don't think I've ever showed a black metal record on this show.
Wow, 108 episodes and hasn't happened yet.
Because I'm not really a fan of like contemporary stuff. But that's just my thing. But this band, they call this band a black metal band. We'll get into it a little bit because you guys might be familiar with this band and you can tell me if they are or not. They don't sound like black metal to me. Who knows? They're from Norway. They've been around a while. They've got 8 albums out. They just put out their 8th record last year. And it's basically just a side project of one guy, really. And his name is the name of the band. And he's in 2 other bands. Toulouse is one of the bands that he was in. And Cold, Khold, is another one of the bands that he was in. But this other band that he has is called Sarke.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
Sarke. This is their 8th record. It's basically his side project, but the other guy who's in this band, it's also like a side project for him too, and he's in a very prolific band who get kind of all the attention, and this band tends to kind of get a bit unnoticed, I want to say.
Yeah.
The other guy is Nocturno Culto from Dark Throne, or Ted to his friends. He's the singer in this band, and I love this band. I think this isn't. I mean, they've got eight LPs. I think the first one I heard was like their fifth LP, and I just loved it, like right from the get go. It's very accessible, kind of rocking. And I want to describe this band in this way, and I know it's not the best way to describe them, but when I first heard this band, I immediately thought, oh man, if the Baron from that band, if the Baron from the Amoebics like hadn't gone off the rails, he'd formed Tau Cross, as his old self, without all these weird things that have sort of gone on with him. This band is kind of what I imagine that Tau Cross could have been. It has got that Amoebics thing going on in here. Ted does sound like the Baron meets Tom G. Warrior in his vocals.
All right.
So
especially
spell the name. Is it Sarke? Sarke?
Sarke. The name of the record is called Endo Feight. It came out on Soulseller last year. I mean, people say this is a black metal band, but they take from a lot of different things: hard rock, 80s thrash metal, progressive rock, progressive metal, but it's all so cohesive. There's even Killing Joke in there. There's keyboards, there's other instruments, there's female vocals. I love every record this band has done. I think they're amazing, and nobody ever talks about them. That they broke.
So it's like post black metal.
Yeah, but it's just rocking. It's got that kind of little bit of a Motorhead feel, like late period Amoebics had. I just think they're a great band. I mean, you could just call them heavy metal, really, and it's just taking from all the classic metal of the past and just making some great music. But any of you guys familiar with this?
Is that the garbage truck?
I haven't heard it, but it sounds up my alley.
I mean, honestly, if you're into crust and stuff, I mean, it does. It's got that kind of epic feel to it. Yeah, I'm a big fan. 8th LP, they just broken up.
Is that the garbage truck, Mike? Do I hear the garbage truck? Garbage truck?
That's the garbage truck, yeah.
I hear it. I can hear it. It's playing my
right
song.
Right on time. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of the band, mainly because of the Nocturnal Culto connection. But I had no idea they had 8 LPs out already.
It's kind of amazing, how he was doing records with Dark Throne, who are prolific too, and this band kind of at the same time, almost. Yeah.
But I guess if he's just doing vocals and the other guy's writing all the riffs, maybe that makes it easier.
I think that's what it is. I think the other guy is the main songwriter, and then he just comes in and does his vocals, and they kind of switch instruments around sometimes.
Oh yeah.
The guy sometimes plays drums and sometimes he plays guitar. They've had some other people in this band. They kind of change lineups as they kind of go through the discography and stuff. But when people say if you haven't heard a band, start at the beginning and work your way forward.
Yeah.
I would say do the opposite with this band. Start with this and then work your way backwards. I think it would work out better. But
all right, nice. I'll check that one out.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to I really enjoyed Amoebics Sonic Mass. The Killing Joke influence on that record was amazing, and I really enjoyed that. And if you're saying that kind of spills into this a little bit, I think I'll have to
absolutely.
I'll have to give
the only complaint I've heard about this band is just the production is too clean. But for me, I don't have a problem with that. It's
for black metal.
Yeah, that alone disqualifies it from being black metal.
There you go.
It's prog rock.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I don't know why I just loved them right from the get go. The first time I heard them, and that's my second pick.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what else you like, Mike, that makes sense. The guy in the Blues Creation shirt. This all adds up.
I like to rock. You know me.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
All right. Oh, I think it was the first time I've ever showed a black metal record, even though it's not really. Okay.
Your streak remains unbroken.
Yes. All right, Stephen, what's your second pick?
I wish the garbage truck played the Suspiria theme, Simon.
Maybe I'll put in a petition. I'll have a word with him next week.
Incredible. All right. So, as I mentioned, I've been spending a lot of time listening to comps. recently, and there's another comp I actually want to show today. This one actually has a connection to the first comp I showed, because I mentioned how that was the first appearance of Contrast Attitude on vinyl. So this is actually another comp that they grace. It's called The Time of Hell.
Oh, wow, okay.
This came out on Game of the Arseholes in 2004, and it's a 4-way split. So, we were just talking about how this is the superior format of split. So I was really giddy to get to my second pick here. But yeah, this here features Contrast Attitude, and inside the notes it says that the sessions on this record were recorded before their first EP.
Okay.
And were actually supposed to be their first vinyl release. So I wonder if it was actually recorded at the same time as their other comp tracks.
Right.
They sound very similar, just really hard hitting, great, noisy raw punk hardcore. And yeah, they're actually coming to the States this year, I think, too. So I'm really excited to see that band again. I saw them last time they came through a decade ago or something. So I'm glad that they're still doing it. And yeah, definitely one of the bands that are really carrying that torch for that Crasher Crust sound. And then the second band's from Sweden. It's Sista Civilisations Dad. And as far as I can tell, this band has only released songs on comps.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's just a little side project that some friends threw together. It's I think it's some of the guys from Scum Brigade and one of the guys from Skit Kids. And even on this, 2 of their songs are cover songs. They do a Miss Brucarna song and a Svart Fronten song. So 2 Scandi heavy hitters. So they're a band that definitely knows their Swedish hardcore, and they do it right. And then you flip it over on the B side, you've got Bestoven, which is probably the most infamous Brazilian D-beat band. Fafeo, the one-man D-beat master from Brazil. Guy has, I think, last I checked, over 40 releases under the Bestoven name, not even counting his comp appearances. So this is a band where you can kind of hit or miss with some of his material. And I say this, who's been involved in several Bestoven releases even. So I've been in several bands that have done splits with him. He's the unholy grave of Brazil. And we love him for it. But yeah, I feel like these are some of the better side of his tracks. Just good delivery, good stuff. Like you were saying before, Mike. No one wanted to be the band that got left in the dust on this comp. And then saving the best for last. They're not Death Side, but they're close. They're Disclose. Kawakami, DB Master. And this is right from smack in the middle of his Disbones era. I think this was recorded the same time as the Sound of Disaster tape, which also was out on Game of the Arseholes. So it's that's the kind of sound. But yeah, 4 bands just bringing their great best material, doing raw punk. And it's funny, in Stewart's notes on the inside of the record, he's oh, in 2004, raw punk is so trendy now, and everyone's going to be over it in a few more years. But here's 4 bands that are really doing it, and thank God, the best kind of punk in the world is finally popular. But I wonder what he thinks about today, because
he'll be over it. Other people won't.
Yeah. I don't know if you can tell, but the cover, it looks all black, but it's actually got this embossed mushroom cloud on it. So it's hard to, it's not really picking up the skin. And I don't know if this counts as an obi strip, if it's just on the spine, but it's got this little removable piece here. So yeah, nice little 4-way split. 4 great bands from the early 2000s, doing the sound right. I think it's still got a lot of replay value up to this day. I'm oh yeah, there are good comps that deserve to be pulled out and listened to, and bang your fist to. So if you haven't heard it and you like any of the bands mentioned, definitely required listening, I would say.
It's a good one. It's so cool looking. The very minimalist, stark texture emphasis. Instead of going for black and white, they went for all black, and it's a little more suave and sophisticated feeling. But yeah, that rules. I loved the Contrast Attitude tracks on that so much when I bought it. I mined that for a lot of mixtapes.
Indeed, yeah, it just opens so powerfully. Yeah, definitely a big influence, I think, on the sound of a lot of my bands going forward. After I heard that, it's one of those records that changes you, and you're between that and the acrostic split, I was who is this band? Damn, they know how to start a record.
Yeah. I used to go and see them quite a lot, not long after they started. They've had quite a few lineup changes. They used to have different guys in the band back then. I remember one time I went to see them, and this such a vivid memory for me, because I don't think I've seen anything quite so punk looking since that evening. So one of the guys in that band had this outfit on, and the left side, I think it was all leopard print, and then the right side of him was leather.
Interesting.
Yeah. So how some people dye their hair half bleached and half black. This guy went the whole hog. He had half leopard print and half leather. and I was impressed.
Yeah, it's a bold look.
Bold look. Yeah, and then afterwards, I think he got fired from the band after that.
wasn't meeting the dress code requirements.
Stud count wasn't up to par.
Quite a look.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that tour.
Yeah, Nightfall actually got to open for them last time they came through Philly,
nice.
So definitely excited to
They've
see
been
them.
They've been a 3-piece for a while, right? I think.
Yeah, I think they were a trio when we saw them,
right?
When we played with them. But yeah, still very powerful, like loud as hell. Like the drummer was like standing up, playing his drums by the end of the set, just pounding on them. Like they definitely bring that crasher crust. They crash.
They also have like this little bit of a sort of rock and roll edge that's been creeping in, I think, just in their sort of the way they do things, like a bit of they play with like Rocky in Sweden and stuff a lot.
Yeah,
they're quite stylish, a lot of like leather and just, I don't know, a lot, just this sort of rock and roll sort of touch to them that I feel.
Yeah, and at this point they've been a band for over 20 years now. So yeah,
right, it's crazy.
I'm not surprised that they're evolving their sound.
Yeah, it's crazy. 20 years.
I know, right?
All right, Hazel, what's your second pick?
So the category is first show I went to in 2025.
Whoa.
All locals show in Pittsburgh with 3 bands that my friend Jem plays in. So he played 3 sets back to back. Absolute maniac. I'm in awe. But so the first band I saw in 2025 was Larval State, who I can't talk about because they don't have a real physical copy release. They only have like a Bandcamp, but they're cool. They're like freaky psych punk with 2 bass players and a noise guy, and it's kind of like Hawkwind meets like some anarcho punk. I like them better live than on the tape, but it's cool tape. They're good band. Second band that played was this band Positive Thinking, who just dropped a tape called The Power Of, and they're like a hardcore band. They're good though. Like they're, I get kind of bored with like meat and potatoes hardcore a lot of times, but they keep it interesting. They've got some cool riffs. And one of my favorite things about this band is that they have really thoughtful, like, political and personal lyrics. And that set in particular felt really important to be watching. So that was really cool. But this is also not the highlight. The headliner also released a new tape last year. This is Pittsburgh's own Big Baby with Bigger. This is super catchy, kind of garagey punk. Not a hardcore band, very, very punk. There's elements of it that remind me a lot of like 70s LA punk. Very like catchy. There's cool guitar leads. There's like interesting bass stuff going on, but it still feels really high energy and it doesn't get wacky. Like sometimes they play with a lot of the like egg punk bands and stuff, and I don't want to like pigeonhole them in with that too much because they're not like as like wacky as I associate with that. But they would fit really well on a bill with a band like Coneheads or Liquids, the more like high energy, like straightforward punk stuff that gets associated with that. And
that lumpy sound.
I really like them. They're one of my I have 4 like super favorite Pittsburgh bands, and this is one of them. They're also really, really good live. I've gone to a lot of shows that I would not otherwise have gone to, and places I would not otherwise have gone to because I want to follow them around and see them. So that's my second pick for.
Did they play?
They're a bonus first too because they're the first band to play the first show that I booked in Pittsburgh after I moved up here.
Oh, nice!
A couple of different things going on there.
Did they play Babyland at Skullfest a couple years back?
They did.
Okay, yeah, I've seen them. Yeah, they were fun. They were. Yeah,
I feel like they're underappreciated because they don't really tour that much. So like they play Pittsburgh a ton, but I'm not sure how often they play out of Pittsburgh. So they're kind of like a best kept secret.
And how many tapes do they have now?
Demo and 2 other tapes. So 3. There's like a demo, and then there's a second one, and then this is the new one. And My favorite stuff of theirs is some of the stuff on the demo because it's like a little bit rawer sounding, but it's all good. It's all fun.
Classic. The demo was better.
First demo only.
And also, that's what happens sometimes when you like see a band live constantly. Is like you get used to the song sounding a particular way, and so that's like what you think of as like the right way. And then sometimes you hear a re-recorded version of it, and you're like, "That's not how that goes."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely think of a few bands whose like recorded material never matched their live output, and it's like disappointing. It's like it just lives on in your memory after that. Like they're long broken up or whatever, and it's like, well, I'll always remember how those shows sounded.
I see that a lot in the groups and stuff that we post on. Someone will post like a 7-inch or a tape or whatever, and then someone from the town that band is from or the country will be like, "Oh yeah, but they're like so much better live," and it's great. But I'm never going to see that band live probably, so it's always a little bit like frustrating. It's like they're better live, and probably never going to see the band live. But I totally know what they mean. I don't think, like, for example, Warhead, I don't think any of their records are quite like how amazing they can be. Like, it happens a lot, right? I think with hardcore bands and punk bands, it's hard to bottle that energy in, onto a
it gets so sterilized on tape. You're recording track to track, everything is so sterile. You don't have that could come off the rails at any second kind of, wildness about a live performance,
Egg punk drama. All right, Matt, what's your second pick? What you got?
So second pick, this thing, I don't think anybody's posted it on here yet. You, Mike, have posted one of this band's other albums.
Okay.
Their only other album, actually. But this thing made a huge amount of hype when it came out, digitally and maybe on CD and maybe on tape. But the vinyl trailed way behind its original release.
Ooh.
I didn't even know it came out on vinyl for the longest time. And had to go back and find a copy of this thing because it was months after the CD had come out. So this band, you already know?
No, I want to ask you, is it on Agipunk?
No, it is not.
Oh, okay.
No, it is not.
Okay.
It is on Monolith. This band is from Portugal, but they should probably be from Japan.
Okay, I know what it is.
This is Nagasaki Sunrise.
Nagasaki Sunrise. There they are.
So this is the first Nagasaki Sunrise LP. And this thing is maybe the greatest modern Burning Spirits record. It is like kind of perfect Deathside stadium crust. It's so good. It's got this perfect Burning Spirits with a bit more metal kind of fused in there. And it made a huge splash, like digitally.
Okay.
And then by the time the vinyl came out, it seemed like everybody forgot. Now the new album just came out, and it's picking up some hype, and it's really good. But this is the one that really kicked it off for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't really digitally listen to anything. I don't download music. I pretty well buy vinyl online blindly without sampling things. But this is one of the things I saw so many people talking about it. I had to check it out. And it just kills. It is absolutely Deathside playing in Epsi. There's a great description.
There you go.
You got me hooked.
I suppose I have the question I must ask of you, Matt, is which of these do you prefer, the first LP or the second?
I think I like this one more,
okay.
But I tend to like the first one I heard the best.
Yes.
When it comes, the one that soaks in at the first time tends to be my favorite lifelong. So, is it better? I don't know.
Right, no.
Is it my favorite? Yeah, it
okay.
Probably is. And I ordered this. I had to get it on eBay, which is really unusual for me. So of course I ordered the limited blue vinyl, but it took way too long to get here, and the tracking still says it's somewhere in the Atlantic. So thanks eBay.
Glad it floated to the surface for you.
I was getting kind of worried. And the eBay, the people, I won't name names, but the people who I bought it from were not answering my messages. So it took like, I don't know, 50 days to get here or something like that. But whatever,
I want to hear that now that you've sort of said it. You like it better than the other one. Is such a good time. It's so massive.
So
like all those guitar solos and like
I hate that term stadium crust,
but
like
in a good way. Like it
is in a good way. It's huge.
Sometimes it just fits.
Epic, massive, giant production. Like it is really great.
I mean, it's not normally my thing either, but they do it so well. You can't help but love it. I love the second one, so I'm excited to hear the first one.
I always used to say that like Selfish were the best Japanese band not from Japan.
Oh, but absolutely.
These guys they're not exactly the same thing, but they're definitely giving them a run for their money on that title.
I think I don't know, maybe it's just I haven't heard the first one, but the second one is definitely more like metal, right, than I feel. But man, such a good time band. I know. So.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
It's one of those ways sort of like it makes you almost laugh. It's like, man, that solo was like so ridiculous. It was fucking amazing.
It's funny because these guys are like kids, right? Like these guys didn't play in 10 other bands before this, but they play like they did. They play like they're pros. They play like they've been in the scene, they've been doing this for a long time, but not the case,
Yeah.
These guys, they really, learn from the masters, I guess, right?
I love that second record. It's amazing.
Well, that's the thing when you have like young kids putting out their first record. It's like they've had their whole life up until now to write these riffs. So I mean, of course they're going to be amazing and over the top. Like they're pouring everything into that stuff. The second record's the hardest one to write because then it's like, okay, we had all the time in the world to write that first record, and now you've got like 9 months.
8 months to pound something out.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a bit of a maybe a 3-4 year gap though between the first one and the second one, right? Is that right?
Definitely a couple of years.
Okay.
I'm sure my phone will tell me.
Great band. Nagasaki Sunrise.
Nagasaki Sunrise, Nostalgia.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Yeah, I haven't heard them yet, but I'm like you, Matt, where I usually only listen to stuff when I can get it on vinyl. So if the vinyl's been hard to find in this side of the ocean, then that might be why I haven't come across it yet.
2021, 2024.
Okay, 3 years. Okay, all right.
But the vinyl didn't come out till 2022. Like I said, it was way beyond the original digital release, and
and that's during the pandemic too, when everything got fucked up. So
people kind of forgot about it by the time it finally
they
came out.
Momentum, right? With that.
Yeah, they lost some momentum for sure because it was hot. Like that when that came out digitally, like I was seeing it shared all over the place. It was hot.
Yeah.
Shame they couldn't capitalize on having records at the time.
Yeah, last time me and Hazel were both on, she highlighted a record that got lost in the pandemic haze too. That Deep Tissue record, another one that was so amazing. But yeah, the vinyl didn't come out for like a year, and then like the band didn't play a release show until like a year after that, and just by that point you lose all your momentum.
I was thinking you were thinking of the Ego, that band Ego. They're based in Germany, but they had one LP out on Agipunk, which is amazing, and then they have another LP that came out on Agipunk. That got lost too. I don't think it even made it to the record stores in Japan. It's on Agipunk. Ego, they're sort of based in Berlin, but they're from all over the place in Eastern Europe. I think
that happened on the last Belgrado record too.
Right.
That thing, like those first few records were huge. They were amazing, and that last one, it was on La Vitesse and Muse, I think, but it totally fell off the face of this planet for some reason. And I'm sure it's amazing, but I've never been able to find a copy.
Yeah, I got a copy through Sorry State, I think, when it first came out, and I have listened to it a lot, I must say. It was pretty good. I feel like he's usually pretty good about keeping his stuff in press, too, so, I mean, hopefully it's floating around out there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll track one down eventually.
Yeah.
All right. All hail the blind buy in the discount bin. I saw this record quite cheap. I saw that it was on Svart Records. I trust Svart Records. I looked at the record. I liked the look of the record. I'd never heard of the band. They're from Finland, or they were from Finland. And I bought it, and my kind of expectations were, I don't know, maybe I was expecting some of that sort of not amazing Finnish punk. You know, that there's a lot of that, right? It's kind of not hardcore, just like Finnish punk from like the early '80s, which is enjoyable, but nothing mind blowing. That's kind of what I was expecting when I, bought this record and took it home, and kind of went to the back of the pile actually for a couple of weeks because I wasn't that excited about it. And then one night, a couple of weeks ago, I pulled it out and put it on, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this might be the best like Finnish record I've heard, like not ever, but it's up there. And I was just blown away by how amazing it was. And it's not punk, it's kind of post-punk, kind of death rock, kind of gothic. And I think some of you guys might know this record. I posted it on the Facebook page about a month ago. And
I think I know what this is.
People were going crazy about it. It's like, man, everyone loves this band. And, I'm just getting to them right now in 2025. But I'm talking about.
Yes. Oh, it's so good.
Oh, yeah.
How amazing is this? I could not believe it. I could not believe how fucking amazing this record was when I put the needle on the groove and was like, Jesus Christ, this is not what I was expecting. I mean, I say that either expecting, like I said, some sort of okay Finnish punk or some sort of third tier, Finnish hardcore from '83. No, this is like the best.
That's a killer. That's a killer.
It's like the best, like post-punk, like death rock, gothic rock that you'll probably might ever hear. It's phenomenal. That's it. That's what I got to say. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I remember when you posted it.
I don't remember if I've heard this before or not. I think I might have, but I'm definitely going to revisit it now.
Look at that. None more. Look at that. So Finland. Look at that.
Yeah.
He's got a Motorhead patch on his leather jacket. The headband, just like, oh man. Yeah, I posted it on the Facebook page, not expecting anyone else to sort of know what it was either, and then. Boom, 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 boom. 10 out of 10 record, like one of the best Finnish records of all time, absolute classic. And then, everyone was like going on about how good it was, and I think it was Todd Burdett chimed in with, oh, by the way, he said, there's a second LP by this band, and the singer is Epe from Lama.
Oh, that's right. He did mention that.
And I was like, how can this get any better than, it already is? I'm dying to hear that too. I mean, the singer of Lama singing for this band, it must be amazing, right? And I guess I've done a reissue of that too. I hope they have. I'm not sure.
Because this is the only one I own by them. And,
okay.
I remember I caused a little bit of a stir when I commented. And I was like, I wasn't sure whether to file this with my punk records or with my new wave records. And then people were like, what? You separate your records by genre?
Me too. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to describe because, you say it's post-punk or gothic or whatever, but, those tags don't do it justice.
Yeah.
Like every song is absolutely incredible. Like the vocal hooks, the way he sings, it does remind me of Siakira a little bit from Poland. And even his voice sounds like the singer of Moskva from Poland. It has that cadence to it, that very desperate kind of cadence to it. And I think his vocals really push this one over the top. I don't know. It's just like I was, and it's not just because my expectations were low. This is a phenomenal record. I would recommend this to anybody who likes good music. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that must have been such a fun record to be surprised by. Just to be like, where your expectations were to like compared to where they must have been like 5 minutes in.
Thinking, I'm pretty hip to the sounds of Finland, so I know what's going on, like, how did I miss this one, one of the best ones? So it just shows you, there's things to discover that you haven't heard, still out there, tons of stuff.
And if you want to hear this record, you just have to find it in your own local bargain bin, like Mike did. It's the only way to hear the records on the show.
It was actually online, actually, like on a sort of sale. This record should not be in a bargain bin. It should not be on sale. It should be the full price.
Yeah.
But they've repressed this like a bunch of times. I think the first like 2012, and then they've like reissued it almost every year, I think, since. It's pretty in demand, I think, this record.
Nice. To answer Paul's question, I did end up filing it with my new wave records.
Okay.
Because I want to listen to it more when I'm in a new wave kick than when I'm in a punk kick. So it's like part of the reason I break it down that way is when I'm in like a similar mood, I can just grab a stack of records and listen to them in order. So that's where they landed. Now you know.
That is a difficult one though, because it does have that sort of cold, hard edge to it. But there's also those really like kind of poppy keyboard lines and synth lines underneath. So
I know, Mike, you actually inspired me. I think I want to create a new micro genre within my collection. That's like the new wave of post punk, and it's for all that like kind of in between stuff.
right. Yeah, top notch recommendation and probably my biggest pleasant surprise in sort of recent memory of like blind record buying.
Yeah.
So it does pay off sometimes.
That's a hell of a blind score for sure. That's a killer, man.
I mean, does it mean just being ignorant or yeah, this is just it's so good. Check it out.
Yeah.
Mustaparati Peli Talosa originally came out on Johanna Records in '83 and has been reissued many times on Svart Records from Finland.
Turns out you can judge a band by the haircut.
Sorry, 2 seconds. Speaking of haircut, was that fucking JTA making fun of my haircut down there?
I don't think he watches this show. Does he? Is he
Oh,
Royal
no.
131?
Somebody called you a skinhead.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway,
hard to keep up in this fast-paced chat.
all right. Oh, it's Steve's turn, right?
Oh yeah, this is round 3 now. Okay.
Round 3, yeah.
So this is a record I've been listening to a lot lately. I think it's probably my favorite metal release of 2024. I just finally got it on vinyl in like January, so I've been like catching. This is why I never make a list before the end of the year, because I know my picks are gonna just get blown out of the water by something. And so yeah, this is a record I've listened to a lot. It's a black metal record, not my first. I think I have shown black metal records before, but this one's also very punky, so I think it will appeal to the more punk-minded crowd too. It is the second LP by Invunche called Atavismo. This just came out on Nuclear War Now Records, based out here in the States. The band, they've actually been around since 2014. This is their second LP, like I said. It's like many black metal bands, it's the brainchild of one guy who goes by El Invunche. He's a Chilean-born artist, but he was raised and currently lives in Netherlands. So that's where he records from. But he still has a very deep spiritual connection to his homeland, which is what all of his music really shows. And this LP really, goes there. Like even like looking at the back, like the photography, the typography, all of it. It just really, it's like a complete package. And same thing with like the interior here. I just really love this photo of him. It's like standing on a beach, looking at his reflection in a mirror, like. Just a lot of attention went to the design of this record, and same thing with the music too, because he gets grouped in with like a lot of that really punky black metal. Like it has like the 1-2 stompy beat, like Iljarn and Bonal. But then this guy also, he's like really influenced by like psychedelic and prog rock and stuff like that. So a lot of that gets in there too. And then you also have like the South American folklore elements that also get mixed in. So like this it quickly has evolved from like your typical kind of like raw punky black metal record to something like completely different. And one thing I like about this LP too is that all the tracks really flow together really nicely. Like you think about classic prog bands like Captain Beyond or King Crimson, and how like one side of the album just sounds like one long continuous journey. Like this record's the same way. Like each track just flows seamlessly in, and he's got like some really interesting arrangements going on. Like you get the 1-2 punky beat, but then it'll like open up into like some like really like brilliant triumphant sounding stuff. Oh yeah, and like the two sides of the record are themed too. It's the sun side and the moon side. So on the sun side, these really like bright triumphant kind of arrangements. Then you flip it over and you get these kind of like more subdued, moody tracks on the moon side. More of the like traditional South American instruments make an appearance. There's like one part where he's like playing flute and lead guitar at the same time, and but it doesn't sound like Jethro Tull. So right, but it still has that like that prog backbone to it. So. Yeah, like I said, like I was already a fan of this guy's stuff. I heard his first LP and I really liked it, and then I picked up his EPs in the meantime. And so when this record came out, I was greatly looking forward to it. And actually, they're already on their second press of this record. Like I said, it just came out on Nuclear War Now, and I heard that this was the very first record pressed at. They just opened a brand new record pressing plant in Texas called Helios Records, and it's a joint venture. Yep, joint venture between Nuclear War Now and Enormous Door Mastering, which is Jack Control from World Burns to Death, Severed Out of State, Butcher, a bunch of classic bands, and who's mastered probably half of the great punk records that you love, and probably all the Darkthrone records you own. So it's cool to see these guys working together and like bring some pressing back to the U.S. And I like this is a great first record to press. So yeah, if you haven't heard it, definitely highly recommend it. Like I said, I've been listening to it like every single day. Can't get enough of it. Just really epic stuff. And yeah, hopefully. I also saw that he has put together a live band for this record, and he's been playing shows in Europe. So I'm hoping that he will maybe come to the States sometime this year or maybe next year. So fingers crossed on that one. But yeah, highly recommended. New punky black metal, lots of prog influences. Definitely kind of a unique beast in and of itself.
I mean, Paul mentioned it, but just the look of that record. I mean,
Yeah.
It's wild. I'm intrigued, and I'm not a black metal person, but
right. Yeah, like I feel like it doesn't even doesn't even do it justice to my camera,
right.
but yeah, it's really beautiful artwork.
And the backside too. It's very cool.
Yeah, just like that soaring yeah, like the record opens up with just like him doing this like battle cry, and it sounds like a condor like swooping in to like peck your eyes out, and it's just full throttle from there. Like,
wow.
See, Cliff, that's why you tune in here. You get all the good backstory on Edo's Press.
The
Jack Control's the fucking man. He mastered like 50% of your favorite records. The ones that weren't mastered by Dan Randall
or Will Killingsworth,
Brad Boatwright, or whatever.
Brad Boatwright. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 like punk scene dudes who've mastered like 90% of your record collection.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mikey Young, another one. Chris Corey.
Oh, this was actually mastered by Arthur Risk, who's another.
He's another one.
There's another guy. Yeah.
So I mean, anything that guy touches just is really like dialed in, like top, like this record just sounds great. I found an interview with this guy too, and he's like, this is the first record I think where he recorded his own drums for. In the past, he's worked with session drummers, but he's like really influenced by a lot of like 70s like prog drumming and things like that. So like he did this great interview where he's just talking about like the process of recording drums and like how to get some of those like 70s tones out of your kit and things like that.
Cool.
So, cool. Yeah, like every detail on this record is just really dialed in, really well done.
Nice. Wow. Sounds great.
The conceptual stuff on it sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Nice. All right.
All right. Time for another blind buy. I'll stick with the theme.
Okay. Cool.
So this was a very blind buy. We're gonna do a deep dive and go back to 2001 for the first record I ever bought. I know the question that everyone wants the answer to, right?
Yeah.
So I started reading Maximum Rock and Roll in like summer of 2001 and heard of many bands before I actually heard them. And some bands I would hear like on the college station, and they would be like the points of reference I would have. But there were a lot of things that I didn't know what in the heck it was. So I didn't really buy a whole lot of things blind because I was 13. I didn't have like money for that sort of thing. So I tried to keep pretty strict, like to purchasing things that I'd like heard on the college station or whatever. But I saw this record. I hadn't heard it. I hadn't heard half the bands it was compared to in the review. But I saw this record and it was like, I read a really lengthy review of this in Maximum Rock and Roll. I think I'm just going to like take a gamble on it. And that record was Strike Anywhere's Changes of Sound. I thought the cover was really cool looking. The review said that it was very good and like this really cool, sincere, like political punk record. They compared it to like DC hardcore and anarcho bands that I'd heard, maybe a few of, not most of it. But there was something about the description that when I saw this, I was like, I'm going to gamble on this. And it ended up being a really good gamble because I loved this record. Like this was a very, very important record for me at the time. The music was cool. Like musically, it's like, I guess you would call it melodic hardcore, which I don't have like a huge amount of benchmarks for because it's not like a main genre interest of mine. Being in Philly at the time, like Kid Dynamite was really popular still, and all the post Kid Dynamite bands and all that. Yeah. And like I liked them well enough, but this band like way outshone them for me. So I didn't really like stick with that genre so much. But I think this one still holds up, and they do have like really well written, very like super sincere, genuine political lyrics where they do a really good job of like singing about relevant concepts in a way that's nuanced, but also not like overly complex, which when you're, 13 and 14, that's like exactly the kind of thing you want to be hearing. So if you're, it's kind of like, actually another Steve pick. It's in some ways it's reminiscent to me of like Strawman Army, the way they do these like very sincere, like kind of poetic political lyrics. I think Strawman Army is probably like a notch above, but similar sort of vibe with that. And I I was very, very like obsessed with this record. I made my like bootleg shirt of the cover that I wore like every day for a couple of years. Saw them a bunch of times, and then the record after this came out, and I like didn't really like it and kind of like lost interest in it. But this one still holds up for me. Like I will still pull this one out and listen to it and still know like all the words on it and still find it really inspiring.
So I've never heard that album. I've heard some of their later stuff, and it's not my cup of tea. But what I can tell you is they came into the record shop here in town while I was working one time. They played Moncton once, and they were very nice guys. And they had good taste in music. They bought some cool records. But I've never checked out that one. So maybe this is the kickoff for me. I'll have to dig in a little bit.
Mm.
There was a thread on the Profane Existence message board like a million years ago too, where all the Crusties were talking about how much they love this record. So it's not just me.
Cool. Right on.
I moved to Philly like right in like late '99. Started to go to shows in 2000, and I remember like 2000 2001. I would see so many people with that patch, and then like maybe like a year later, so many people start showing up with like that tattoo. It was just like everywhere.
I know people with that tattoo.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I feel like I've got to ask, haven't I? Because Hazel has shown the first record that she ever bought. I feel like I've got to ask everyone. Do you remember like what your first record was? It doesn't matter if you don't have it at hand. Do you remember? With you remember? Yeah, Steve, remember the first record you ever bought?
I don't actually. That's a good question.
You could make yourself look cool.
Yeah, 1998, maybe early 99. We had a great record shop here in town called Blast Off Records, named after the first Flesh Tones. They really specialized in 90s like garage punk, garage rock. But I bought a Misfits collection too, and an original Bad Religion No Control the same day.
Nice. Good way to kick things off.
Yeah, I'm still like a stupid Misfits fan. I'm totally like a scumbag Misfits guy for sure.
My mum and dad had already bought me a few records, like Wings at the Speed of Sound and like an ELO record, but pocket money counts, right? That's your own money, right? Your pocket money is your own money, right? So if it's going to be pocket money, then it was either like Pink Floyd Relics or, this is crazy actually, Black Sabbath Heaven and Hell.
Now we're talking specifically vinyl, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I bought like Weird Al tapes.
Weird Al was my first CD ever. I remember that.
There you go.
Yeah.
My first little record I don't own anymore, so I couldn't show it, but it was a Forgotten 7-inch.
Right.
I don't think it's bad. It didn't survive one of my purchases, but like I'll still pull it up on YouTube periodically. Like I would buy this again if I saw it in the dollar bin or something, but
find your own copy
of things.
Probably on like TKO or something like that, I guess. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a lot of roads.
They were actually pretty good. Forgotten were pretty good.
Yeah, I saw them in like 2002. I think it was on the same show as Oxymoron, and it was like a really solid, like good street punk show.
Oh, Oxymoron for sure. Yeah, 2002.
Yeah, that's like not a genre that I really go deep into, but the bands that do it well, I'll like enjoy, pull out from time to time.
Nice. All right, Matt. What's your next pick?
So Kenny Hellwig, Forgotten. I'm sure I was thinking. I'm sure I got one of those guys like friends on Facebook, but it's Ken. So this last album wasn't a metal record, but the last Mike's and Steve's were. So I decided I'll do my metal record now. Right. So this is a one-man metal band from Portland, Oregon. We played with them on this tour here in town when they came through. One of my old bands did. And strangely enough, on this album, even though it's a one-man metal band, he had a guest drummer who is Mr. Donnie Paycheck from Zeke, which is a horribly underappreciated band. Man, yeah. Zeke rule. But on this band had Zeke drummer Donnie Paycheck on the album, but on the tour and for the next couple of years, he had a couple of Canadian dudes, Phil Zeller and Al Chambers. This is Toxic Holocaust.
Oh, nice.
This thing is probably top 10 modern metal records for me. This was the first Toxic Holocaust I ever heard. Wild Dogs, the opening track, is just this absolute raging kind of metal punk, full speed ahead tune. I love it. And like I said, when we played with him on this tour, he had a couple of guys who I'd met multiple times years before because they were in Rammer and Goathorn and Cauldron and all of the good Ontario metal bands. So they were his touring act for the next couple of years. But Joel, the first Toxic Holocaust, actually, in fact, the very first Toxic Holocaust release was a split tape with an Eastern Canadian band called Holocaust. So Holocaust, members of Napalm Raid.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There you go. It all comes around, right?
Amazing.
Graham from Holocaust, that was like his band, is the drummer in Napalm Raid. But Toxic Holocaust, Wild Dogs, speed metal punk.
That's the record that'll just rip your face right off. Joel really knows what he's doing.
Perfect record.
They're such a fun band.
Amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I remember seeing them on their first tour, and it was like when that first picture disc came out, and I picked that up, and I got like a big metal pin for my denim jacket, and I was sold immediately. I was like, I'm a fan. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm here for it.
I'm not sure if he's watching. I think he is Scott Langley, Scoots, who designed the classic Analog Attack logo. Did not on that record, but he did some of the artwork on one or two of the earlier Toxic Holocaust.
Oh, right on.
Records, which is pretty cool. Maybe that first picture disc.
Evil Never Dies.
Yeah, he'll let us know in the comments. I'm sure if he's still watching. But I remember this Toxic Holocaust sweatpants and all that kind of stuff. That was a thing. One of the big.
I remember that.
That was one of the big things back in the day. Toxic Holocaust sweatpants.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry I haven't gone through my any sweatpants wardrobe changes today, Matt. I know you're looking forward to that.
I was hoping for 5 pairs of sweatpants.
There you go. I
know a buddy of mine found a pair of Bathory sweatpants at Value Village a while back. He was pretty stoked on that. And Hard Charger, I think, did sweatpants. I'm sure they played.
Oh, I remember that band. Yeah.
Those are.
They played with Interloper, actually. Yeah.
Tom Blizzard, who's in War Crusher now. He's on what are you listening to on the Facebook page? But Tom from Hard Charger. Yeah, I'm sure they did sweatpants at one point or another.
Yeah, I think Interloper's first show ever was actually when Hard Charger came through Philly. So
perfect.
There's another connection for you.
Roll, fucking crust and roll.
Yeah.
I've played more times with Hard Charger than probably any other band. Wow, nice. My band has played with my bands over the years have played with Hard Charger like I don't know. Yeah. Probably fucking 20 times. I don't know.
Good dudes, backed hard. Matt, have you listened to any of Joel's newer like synthwave stuff that he's been doing?
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah. For sure.
I had a feeling it'd be right up your alley.
Yeah, I totally do. Yeah.
I was like, of course he's gone from thrash metal to synthwave. It's the obvious pipeline.
Why wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he?
But he's another dude now who's doing like mastering and production and stuff.
Yeah, I think he works at Audio Siege with Brad that we mentioned earlier.
Oh, maybe so. That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, or I know they work together at some point, but hard to keep track of all these guys out there now.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, you should get some Mortician sweatpants. So in the comments, you need Mortician sweatpants.
Yeah, to take to the shooting range.
All right, I think my next pick. Well, I don't think it is. It was also like a blind buy, but I was more confident about this. Well, actually, no, about the same. I didn't really have any expectations for this. It's on Beach Impediment, which
I mean, that's a pretty safe label to blind buy from.
Right, pretty consistent.
I buy 100% of their releases.
Right. Then hopefully you'll have this one. I didn't have this one. It's from like 3 years ago. Well, first of all, I was just drawn to the cover art at first. Kind of stood out to me in the bins there. Kind of actually what you were talking about, Matt, about the sort of the fake soundtrack thing that the cover looks like a sort of fake VHS. It kind of actually has that kind of a vibe, but I do like it. I do like the artwork on this record. New York band has about 5 or 6 members in this band, I think. Maybe 2 drummers, I'm not sure. But yeah, this is also a great record from 2022. Talking about
and quite unlike the rest of the stuff he puts out.
Exactly. That was my surprise part of like the Beach Impediment thing, because I was probably expecting some melodic hardcore or some, whatever, but wasn't expecting this. Well, but pleasantly surprised. Still not sure how to describe it. It's kind of very dark, but also very like poppy.
Yeah.
Dark punk, synth punky kind of
punk. But again, it's like these genre tags that don't really do this band justice. Really like well-written songs, just like a pop record, but with a huge layer of like grey, just like bubbling under the surface of it.
Yeah, it's like a really melancholy pop record.
Yeah, and a lot of like very quiet songs, like not ballads, very. I mean, even the first song's like kind of almost like an indie pop song. The first song, it's kind of all over the place, but it works really well. Like overall,
yeah, I feel like the singer's voice sounds like almost so delicate at times too.
Yeah. And I'm sure she gets the like Susie Sue comparisons. I don't really hear it, but really myself. But it's an easy comparison.
Yeah, it's different enough for sure. It's not on the same vein, really. Yeah, she really has kind of like a unique voice all to her own.
Yeah,
I remember I remember when I got that record, I listened to it a ton. I should actually dig it back out. You've inspired me.
I didn't sort of notice it in 2022 when it came out, and I usually do keep track of like what Beach Impediment's putting out. So this is like from the used bin, but I'd love to see where they go next, because I think this is a very exciting band that might do something real different as they move forward. If they're still a band, I hope they are.
Yeah, sadly, a couple of years ago, and nothing's popped up since. I don't think.
Right.
Hopefully, they're just really taking their time dialing it in. But yeah, it's another record that I filed with my new wave record. So
it's definitely in the synth pop, dark wave vein, but very like poppy, and almost has like a 60s pop thing under the surface, sort of under it's dark and light. It's like at the same time.
I feel like I hear some Cure in there too. Like
it's always a bit cheesy. It's all very well written songs, but they are very memorable, well written songs, which is
very emotional. I remember there being a very emotional record.
Yeah,
and it's funny too, because the cover looks like it would be like a thrash metal record from like.
Paul said that. It just intrigued me. Like I wasn't sure what I was going to get when I took this home. You know what I mean? But it's
exactly.
It's on Beach Impediment. He's probably not gone too far away from what he would usually put out.
Yeah,
he did do a Gentleman Jesse record. Remember?
Yeah.
That was like the only record of his that I haven't bought in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I guess like this is just a painting by Dylan Cameron of this band. I like it. I don't know. It just really like stood out to me in the racks when I saw it. So.
I like the color scheme a lot, but yeah, if I saw that in a store, especially if it were like a little beat up, I would not be making assumptions that they're anything like what you guys are describing it as.
Yeah.
I would be thinking like 80s metal record, like bottom tier.
From New Jersey.
It sounds way better than that.
Z-grade 80s metal.
Like even the name might lead you to think that too, right? Like Fantasia.
Yeah.
Great record. Nice discovery for me from 2022. So check it out. Fantasia, Ghost Stories on Beach Impediment Records.
Yeah, you're pulling a lot of records that I own and love tonight, Mike.
Nice. Good
stuff. Keep them coming.
Ooh, I don't know about my last pick. We'll see. But all right. Steve, what's your fourth pick?
Okay, I actually have something that's in the post-punk genre queued up next too. This was another record of mine that was came out last year. Definitely made like my top 20 punk releases list. Which my list had a lot of overlap with a lot of other people's. There was a lot of great records last year, but this was one I feel like didn't pop up in a lot of people's lists. So I feel like maybe this band isn't as well known of as some of the others. And like there were so many great releases that came out in 2024, it's going to be overshadowed a little bit. But this record is the debut LP by Gurs, G-U-R-S. They're from Basque Country, and this record's called Garen Bizigara, which in Basque, I believe that means we live in war. And they're a very political band, but they're also like, they describe themselves as a post-punk band. I think like the band I could compare them closest to would be like Syndrome 81, you know, from like the neighboring France. Like, I don't know if this would qualify as what you call Oi Division, Mike, but like it's still very firmly in the punk. You know, they don't really pull in this, they don't do synths or anything. I even like hear some hints of Oi in there for sure, just in like the melodicness of it. But they do the style really well, and it's like, I personally, like, I don't listen to a lot of Oi, but I love Syndrome 81. I think they're an amazing band. And so, like, if you're in a point where you're like, man, I wish there was another Syndrome 81 record to listen to, like, this one will definitely do the trick. And like I said, they're a very political band. I was like, at first I was like, Gers, what's that? And I looked it up, and it turns out it's actually, they're named after an internment camp that was in France, started in 1939 to basically imprison all the anarchists and communists who were fleeing out of Spain after the Civil War ended. And then later, during like the Nazi regime, it got, you know, turned into like a concentration camp, and they were storing like German Jews there, and then like enemies of the state and all this other stuff. So, yeah, even like to their very band name, you know, the politics are very deeply interwoven, and like all the lyrics are in their native Basque language too. So I can't really say what the songs are about. I did a little bit of Google translating, and you know, it's the typical stuff you'd see, like, you know, living in like struggling against like a post-capitalist society, you know, trying not to become too hopeless and depressed, you know, remembering that we got to stick together and fight back and kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just like a really good, fun, anthematic record, like really great melodic songs, like strong guitar hooks, you know, shouted vocals. So, you know, definitely still firmly on the punk side of that, like kind of post-punk thing. Yeah, it definitely has a lot of that French Oi influence, you know, coming from like just on the other side of the, you know, the Pyrenees Mountains there. So you can tell a lot of that's bleeding over into their sound. But yeah, they have an EP that came out before this, and then this 12-inch just came out in 2024. This is actually released on Symphony of Destruction Records, which a few of my other picks from previous episodes have been on too. So I gotta say, it's a great record label from France.
Yes.
Keep delivering the hits. A lot of good stuff on there, and this is definitely one of them. So yeah, one of my, you know, favorite kind of melodic post-punk Oi influenced record from last year. If you're into that kind of stuff, highly recommended. Check it out.
Beautiful. I noticed like a couple of days ago, I think Disc Union must have just gotten a shipment, and they've just got that in stock. So
yeah,
it should be mine.
Yeah,
I've
yeah, and
been
it's got this,
distros now for a little while. I've been meaning to pick up a copy.
it's got this really nice hand screen printed cover too. I guess it was done by like a local artist that the band's friends with. So like, yeah, just everything about this is like really kind of encapsulates that like punk spirit of collaboration and like DIY ethic. Oh yeah, and as Rachel mentioned, they're also on this really great comp that came out recently that she may have been involved with.
Yes. There we go.
That's a super cool looking record. I have not listened to that at all, but that's another one. So like, I don't do year-end top 10s for a lot of reasons. I have like an ongoing list of releases I liked from year to year, and I'll just like keep adding stuff. Like I'll keep adding stuff to my 2024 list, because I realized I was like, I never hear enough to do like a year-end top 10, and also like I'm too much of a stats guy to do a top 10. I'm like, what is the justification for this number 10? Is there a purpose to this cutoff, you know? So I like never do it. I just have this ongoing thing going, but that sounds like a good one to check out for sure.
Yeah,
this year 2024 was one of my longest long lists.
Me too.
For my top 10 ever. I think I had like, you know, something like 30 records or 28 records on my LPs. You know, like I really had to narrow down the list this year. It was huge.
Yeah. I did a guest radio show for my friend who has a radio show in Columbus. That was like there's like a collection of picks of stuff I really liked from 2024. And like, it was very easy to fill up with just tons and tons of stuff. And it's still after like a week later, I'd periodically be kicking myself like, oh, I can't believe I forgot to put this on. It's so good. You know, there's a lot of good stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Hazel, what's your next?
Let's see. I know what people expect of me, so I know what. So I know a kind of deep dive lore thing that people probably wonder is, So what is like a first crust record for you? Because I know that's what people are curious about. There's a lot of choices. And so my first exposure to this music, again, like, was in person, not like online. Like, I never really looked it up and thought to myself, like, what does this sound like? I'm going to learn about it. It was something I came into randomly, and then like read about it before I really heard about a lot of the bands, but I'd heard like a few because the college station would play like, an occasional Nausea song or something on it. So like I had some very, very bare bones like ideas of what it sounded like, but didn't really delve into it so much more listening to records until later, because they were also harder to find. Like some of the record stores I was going to, they'd carry punk stuff, but they wouldn't really carry like crust records so much. So when I was like getting into punk, I was still in like very, very Catholic homeschool land, and I didn't like know other people who were into it, but I was getting like frustrated with the situation, and I insisted on like going back to school for high school. I was like, I'm done with this. I want to like be around other people and like, have a life. And I ended up at this delinquent school, and there were other punks there. And that was cool. So like my second day of school, I'm like walking around carrying a bunch of CDs with my Discman. I have like a Dead Kennedy CD and like a Sepultura CD. And the punks are like, oh, you like cool stuff, let's hang out. So I was hanging out with all them in the smoking area. And there's one guy there who like also reads Maximum Rock and Roll and also knows like a lot of the bands that I've like heard of but not heard. So my second day of high school, I'm 13, he like gives me CDs to borrow that he burned from music downloaded off the internet to bring it full circle. And he loans me a CD with like a death symbolic on it and a couple like random other things. And
Nice.
one of the opening tracks on it is like a health hazard song, and he's like, oh, you should check this out because they've got like cool woman singing. And it's like one of the very few times in life that somebody's used that as a selling point and not had it come off as weird and tokenizing. And it's a good band. But he had a really interesting tattoo on his arm that I didn't know what it was, and he'll explain it to me. Logo for a classic 90s crust band that he also made me a CD of for my birthday, which is the first crust band that I really like dissected. And that would be Misery. This is the SDS split, and their songs from this were on the CD. I didn't hear the SDS side until like years later. But the first part of the CD and the other record that I can highlight would be this one. Ooh, that should not be coming out of there. Would be this one, the Who's the Fool LP, which is all Misery, not a split. And this was the first crust record that I like really dissected and listened to a lot. And it took me a minute to really get it because I was used to listening to like more punk bands, but also metal. So the fusion of the two like worked for me really well. But it's also like a lot slower and like a lot more atmospheric and like gloomier sounding. And so some of the songs on here that I like first got into are like the shorter, like punkier songs. I didn't quite know what to make of some of the like slower, more atmospheric stuff at first. But like when it clicked, I got it, and it was like, oh, cool. This is like my thing now. And I didn't know like other people who were into this kind of punk, except for like the one guy I was friends with at high school. And a lot of the shows I was still going to at the time were more in the like street punk or occasional straight edge hardcore shows, because those were what I found out about. Like I wasn't allowed to go to a lot of the like crustier shows because they were house shows. But I did manage to see a couple like real heavy hitters, like at the First Unitarian Church. And so mostly talking about Misery, but I have to give a shout out to one of the first like heavier crust type bands that I saw. Also a record I read about in like my first or second issue of Maximum Rock and Roll. Mike, you're going to hate this.
Yes.
Oh, my favorite.
This is the Three-Way Come AOS split. I saw this cover art in that Maximum Rock and Roll, and it stuck with me. So I saw this randomly at a record store and bought it a couple years after I first saw AOS play, which was one of the first like heavy, mean sounding crust bands I saw play. And so to bring it back to like Rachel's episode and all the Connecticut content, I think there's like a lineage here where Steve, you talk about seeing like React and wanting to start a band and having a band with like dual vocals and all that. And then you did AOS, and then I saw AOS when I was really young and always wanted to do that. And it took me a while, but now I'm finally in a band that is like that. And then I realized like we're playing all these shows in Cleveland right now because Cleveland's kind of adopted us. And there's all these like young kids at it who are sorting out. They're like, what punk do I like? And it hit me like at the most recent one. It's like, oh God, we're like the cross gateway band for kids now. So we've got a whole line from Connecticut through to Philly to now, I guess, Ohio. And I find that really entertaining. And this is one of the reasons why it's all possible.
Brilliant. That's some great lore right there. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I like AOS. I know Matt from AOS. Like he lives in Montreal these days, and he's played in some wild bands like Sex Face and After the Bombs, and AOS rule. Matt's a super nice guy too.
I've known that guy since he was like 16. He was in Contortion, I think, at the time.
Yes, he was. He was in Contortion.
Grind band. Yeah,
they were good.
I would book them at like the local VFW hall in my hometown. And Hazel, speaking of first, so that three-way cum split, that's the first vinyl record I ever appeared on. My first vinyl recording. So, and I feel the same way. Like I've been a lifelong fan of three-way cum ever since that record came out. So,
the first song on this split, it
goes so hard.
Fairly new to this style, and the first song on that split was like, it was like taste defining for me. That was another mixtape staple. Excellent.
And that Misery record, Who's the Fool? Like that wasn't my first Crust LP, but it was probably one of the first Crust LPs I bought. And same thing, I think it was the first Misery record I'd owned. Like just like really open. Like so I got the split CD with Extinction of Mankind where they trade off song for song, which was kind of weird. But then I got that record, and it was the first Misery record I owned, and it just blew me away. Like completely opened my eyes to like a whole new style of Crust. And I was like, this is just what I want to be listening to all the time.
Does anybody want to know what my first Crust record was?
Yeah, absolutely.
I say it sounds like so pretentious though when I say it, but remember where I'm from and my age.
Yeah,
you got to bear that in mind. So
you were there. You were at ground zero.
It would have been like not Axe Grinder, Jesus Christ, not Axe Grinder, Antisect, In Darkness There Is No Choice, and Amoebics Arise were definitely. I owned both of those records when they came out. So
I don't know what my first records were, but I remember as a young fella, my dad was dating a gal whose sons were into punk, but a little ahead of me. And I remember one of them had a tape, and he said, like, this is crust punk, and I was into like the Misfits and the Damned and Dead Boys, and it was like Electro Hippies, Heresy, Concrete Socks, that wave. That was probably the first crust stuff I ever heard.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely got into it through the Connecticut and then Minneapolis connection, and then worked my way backward from there. Actually, another classic Crust record I remember, Milos, who plays in Mourn, back during this punk fest in probably 2003, he came to stay in Philly, and I was living in this tiny little 2-bedroom apartment, and I had I think 20 kids from out of town staying with me. So poor Milos walks in, and he's like, and he was with his partner at the time. He's like, well, there's nowhere for us to sleep. And I knew that the neighbor across the hall in the apartment building I was living in had just moved out. So I went over and I broke into her apartment, and I was like, here's a wide open apartment for you to, I was like, stay here all weekend. I was like, if the landlord comes and gives you any trouble, they never come around, so you're probably fine. But if off chance the landlord shows up, just speak Polish to him and pretend you don't know what he's saying and just leave, and then I'm sure it'll be fine. But thankfully he got to stay there the whole weekend. No one, interrupted his nice little Philly vacation. So at the end of that trip, to thank me, he gave me a copy of Amoebics Monolith on vinyl.
Oh.
Wasn't an original, but still, it was my first Amoebics record ever. And then I listened to that nonstop afterwards. He's like, this is one of the best punk records ever. You got to have it. So I always really appreciated that. He was my gateway into Amoebics. And
I'm a fan.
That's an arguable statement, though. I almost pulled Morn Asylum tonight.
Okay.
I seriously considered pulling that one tonight.
Yeah, great record. Yeah. Clearly another band heavily influenced by Amebix. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Warren was almost supposed to play at my parents' house back when I was doing shows there in Philly, but like we got like shut down basically at the show we did before that, and they had to move it somewhere else.
was that when they played?
Timer.
I think they played International Waters House instead that time.
Yeah.
All right, Matt. What's your next pick?
So this is something that we've either talked about this band on the show or before the show or after the show, but according to the list, nobody's ever pulled this band before.
It gets confusing, right? You think sometimes at the after show thing.
Right, I had to look it up because I know that we've talked about them. I know that I've been on shows where we've talked about these guys. This is maybe arguably my number one record of the first wave of the 2000s, like 2000 to 2010. It was my record of the year it came out. It is absolutely astonishing. Produced, I guess, by mixed and mastered by Mr. Jay Reatard. They are a Canadian band, and it is the Brutal Knights.
Okay.
This thing absolutely. So when this record came out, it was the same time as some fucked up record. I can't remember which one, but they came into the record store that I worked at, and me and one of the other guys were like, "Oh, these records are both on Deranged. We better like check them out on the record player because we may want these and we don't want them to go to customers. Like these might be really good." And he dropped the needle on it, and he said it's mine too quick before I did. And that coworker of mine is actually Eric Neurotic from Fear of Lipstick, Varsity Weirdos, Cheap Wine. He played in the Steve Adamek band for a while.
Yes,
so Eric works with, and he's in Chiller, Chiller, and I don't know. He's been in a pile of bands over the last bunch of years. Something on Dirt Cult. There's one on Dirt Cult too. I can't remember the name of the band. But he grabbed this quickly, too quick for me to grab it. And I had to wait for the next copy, the next week or 2 weeks later to restock. But Feast of Shame is like this wicked combination of like 90s garage punk, like New Bomb Turks and that kind of stuff, mixed with kind of hardcore, mixed with some 77 punk. All the lyrics are goofy and jokey because the singer's a stand-up comedian. It's just this magical record. Guys played in like Union of Uranus, Chokehold, Legion 666. Currently in Career Suicide, but quite a plethora of wicked Canadian bands some of these guys played in. But this record absolutely still to this day is maybe my favorite record from 2000 to 2010. And when we dropped that needle on it in the store, it was totally blind. We'd never heard of the band. Didn't know anything about it. We just said, "Oh, it's on Deranged, so we got to check this out."
Right.
And
is that the first album?
This was their second LP.
Second album, okay.
Yeah, Pleasure is All Mine is the first one.
Okay.
Second one. And we got them out here, a handful of years later. And they with Maximum R&R, who are a sadly underappreciated Toronto band. But wicked live. They're just phenomenal. And, I like to count John, the guitar player, John Sharon, as a buddy of mine because, whenever I'm in Toronto, I always shoot him a text and we get to go get a beer or something. He's a super good dude. He was in Hassler years later too. And they've stayed at my house a couple of times. What a absolute killer of a record.
I've got a couple of their records. I don't have that one. I love both of the ones I have, and I'm always on the lookout for more, but they don't really show up too much used.
You need this one, man. Desperately need this one. I'll keep my eyes open.
I think one of the ones I have is like a comp of some of the 7 inches, maybe.
There's definitely a comp. Yeah.
Okay.
Living by Yourself, I think.
Maybe. It's got a yellow cover. I think it's.
Yeah.
I'll bring it out later.
Yeah.
Nice. Beautiful.
Just
I bought a
can't get-
Fearless record though the other day. In the dollar bin.
You're
It's
doing
good.
okay. That
It's
dollar
good.
bin's treating you good.
Yeah.
All right. Damn, it's the last round, eh?
Yeah, we've talked about some good stuff already.
We have. There's
Excited-
more to come. Don't
Yeah,
stop.
excited to
This could
excited
be
to see what everyone's final pull is tonight.
this could be the best round yet. So don't go away. This
Yeah,
kind of falls under we were talking about like how many good records came out like last year. This one I didn't get last year. I just got it, but might have made my list. Maybe. So last week I talked about the Negative Gears record that came out.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's a great record.
It's
Good
really
stuff.
good. It's really, really good. It came out on Static Shock.
Mhm.
And the Alvilda record was like Static Shock Records hit from last year. So I'm wondering, like, did some of
Third
the other
press,
releases-
fourth press, something in right now.
yeah, it's just,
Wow.
it's been pressed for the 3rd time, and like everybody loves that record. So I don't know, if this is true, but maybe some of the other releases got a little bit like overlooked. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't get this one until recently. Some Black Magic Punk from Milan.
Oh,
I think the demo was called Black Magic Punk. I think from
Yeah.
Milan, Italy. The debut LP. Talking about Lucta.
Lucta. Yeah.
I have that record.
Oh, yeah.
Again, how many good records came out last year? It's like it's endless. It's
It's overwhelming.
yeah. Lucta, Eterna, Lotta. It's fierce in the ferocious years of Italian hardcore tradition, but it's also kind of mixed in with this kind of newer sort of like darker. It's not, I don't want to say post-punk, but darker imagery, and it's not straightforward ripping like Italian hardcore. There's some sort of heavier darkness or something going on with this band that kind of sets them apart a little bit from.
Yeah. It's Black Magic Punk.
Yeah, exactly. Those words like sum it up better than I ever could. It's Black Magic Punk from Milan. What more do you need to know? But it's kind of dark, eerie. It does have sort of gothic undertones to it. Fizzy and fuzzy guitar. That guitar tone is absolutely killer on this record. It's this fuzzy, like fuzzy guitar tone. Amazing drumming. Killer vocals. The vocalist Clara Catania is her name. Real like angry, passionate, like rasping vocals, just face melting hardcore, but with these sort of dark, gothic kind of undertones to them. There's a member of Potere Negativo in this band I saw, who were another good record. I think last year. Did that album come out last year? But yeah, anyway. Don't
I
sleep
just had
on
to
this.
double check my list to see if that made my top 10. I know it was in my short list, but it didn't make my list the last year.
I'm not sure if it would have made mine either. And that's not
12. Like it was close.
it's not like a negative comment on this, how good this record is. It's just there were so many good records. I'm not sure if this would have made my top 10, but it's fucking great. It's really, really good. If you miss old Italian hardcore, but with this sort of dark gothic feel to it, check out this record. Lucta, Eterna, Lotta on the beautiful Static Shock Records.
So Static Shock. Rumor is
Mm.
the guy moved to Toronto recently.
Tom Ellis.
Really?
Tom Ellis has moved to Toronto.
Yeah.
He's
I
been
tend
there.
to pick up just about everything on Static Shock, unless it has like a more regional release, because something's more available. Because they'll often split release, or they'll do the European when somebody else does the Canadian or American or whatever. But yeah, I saw that the other day that he's got a new release of a Toronto band coming out, and he kind of mentioned that. Yeah, by the way, I'm also in Toronto.
Yeah. He kind of kept that quiet. I think I didn't know he'd moved in. Yeah, I've been here. He's like, I've been here for almost a year now. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make it easier for you to get your hands on his stuff, Matt.
Sadly, probably not.
I think
The
it's
Canadian distribution market's really weird.
Oh yeah, actually, you were talking about that last time we were on the show.
Yeah. Like I buy the Static Shock versions of Chain Whip records because we can't get their own, the Neon Taste releases through distribution. But it's weird. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how many more records are there from last year that I'm never going to get to, or
I know.
It's crazy.
We'll still be finding gems 5 years from now. That came out last year.
Good. That's good, right? That's a good thing.
Fuck you, Paul.
All right, Steve, what's your last pick of the day? Make it count.
All right. Oh, I definitely am going to make this one count. This is very different from anything else I've shown here. This is another record where, this is probably like one of my all-time favorite records. It's just such a unique record. It absolutely captivated me the first time I heard it.
Oh.
This is a record where a friend of mine who used to own a record store in Austin, Texas, made me a mix one time, and she put a song by this artist on here, and I was just like, what is this? I've never heard any music like this in my life. And I eventually found a copy on vinyl at My Mind's Eye in Cleveland, Ohio, or I guess, was it Lakewood? Whatever that next little community is. But when I found this in the stack, I just couldn't believe my eyes that I was like looking at a copy of this record. And I feel like it has kind of a reputation among record collectors. So like, I feel like you either know it or you don't. If you know it, you're just like, fuck. So I'm going to show it. And I'll be curious if you guys know this one. It's the debut LP by Zelda. That's
nice.
Nods and one shake. So, looking at this record cover, she Zelda's a Turkish folk singer. She was born in 1948. She's like 76 years old, still alive. And if you saw this record, it came out in 1976, you'd think it's just like a folk record, right? I mean, that's what it looks like. But this record is so much more than a folk record. And so she started her career and she, got famous for, doing like renditions of like classic Turkish folk songs. Very, very powerful voice. She's very well versed in that kind of music. So eventually she did a bunch of singles and a label was like, hey, we want you to do like a whole LP of original songs. So she wrote 10 songs and she worked with like this whole array of different like music producers in Turkey, like guys who were involved in like electronic music scene, like rock music, funk music. And I think the back, this is a reissue, and I think the back of this record sums it up perfectly. This record is a space age, Anatolian, electronic, progressive, protest, psych, folk, funk, rock record. And that sounds like a lot, but there really is no better way to put it. Like her vocals are still like the base of these songs, and like she still has like this very powerful, like almost like folk, like informed by Turkish folk music approach to like how she does the vocals. But then the background music is just like space funk and like has like these traditional instruments, but like treated like through crazy electronic processors and effects loops and things like that. And it's very, very 70s, and it's got parts where it gets kind of funky, but then you also have like these Anatolian like time signatures, so it's just like completely unpredictable. It's just one of the most out there wild records I've ever heard.
It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, somebody I used to be friends with had this on CD and played it in the car so constantly anytime we would go anywhere that it got to the point that I had to say, can we listen to something else? That's how many times it was played. And I wasn't like mad about it. I liked it, but I also was like, oh no, not again.
It's one of those records. It's like when you play it,
much it was loved.
Right. It's like when you play, it's like it's hard to follow. It's one of those ones. Like, what do you play like after this? Kind of what it's one of those records.
Yeah. So he just let it play again and again and again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the kind of record where afterwards you just need to kind of like take a break, smoke a cigarette, be like, whoa, what the fuck did I just hear? And like the cool thing about her too is she's actually like punk as fuck. Like her songs were super political, like she grew up like under this very repressive Turkish regime, so a lot of her songs were about that. And like she got arrested like a bunch of times because she just refused to change the content of her songs or like without any pressure from the government. And as soon as she got back out, she would just go right back to what she was doing. As far as I know, she was still actively playing festivals as recently as like 2014.
Wow.
So, she's like I said, I know she's still alive. I don't know if she hasn't released anything recently, but I mean, she's also 76. So I give her so, she's earned a break. She's done a lot. So apparently
there we go. New York. So there we go. 2024, New York. Thanks, James.
Man,
150. That's a little, That's a little pricey, but
I may have had to like sell some of my organs to go to that. I would have loved to see her live.
sorry, sweatpants.
You know, like I always kind of think of her as like the Turkish like vice versa, because I'm a huge Boys and Girls fan too, and I feel like both of them just have like really powerful, distinctive voices. Both just like completely uncompromising women who just created some of the most unique and amazing punk music out there. And like I've checked out some of her other records. Like I said, this was her first LP. I've checked out some of the ones that came after, and they definitely veered more back into like the heavy like Turkish folk background.
Okay.
This is the one that really got weird. And
Okay.
but like in the most delightful way. Like I said, there's no other record I've ever encountered on Earth that sounds anything like this. And like I don't care what kind of music you like, just across the board, you need to hear this record. It's just such a trip. And it just makes me so happy every time I hear it. Like, yeah, when I found a copy of this in real life, I couldn't believe it. I was standing in the record store like, oh, this is real. I can hold it. I can listen to it. Like, so, yeah.
That's funny. I was like, make your last pick count. You did not disappoint.
Yeah, I've been thinking about pulling this record for a few shows now, and I'm like, okay, Mike's had me back enough times where I'm going to pull out.
I'm ready. You know what? This is probably a bad comparison. It is, but I'm going to say it anyway. That Gene Clark record, No Other.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, I'm going to show. I've been meaning to show that record for. It's like the guy from the Byrds who normally did sort of just folk music.
Yeah.
Did this record called No Other, which is just like very psychedelic and like cocaine funk. A wild record that doesn't sound like that, but it kind of reminds me of it, and it's like folk music, but just gone like psychedelic and all over the place and funky.
Nice. Yeah, I was really surprised something this progressive was coming out of Turkey in like 1976, because like it's really just all over the charts. Right. And yeah, it gets really funky at times, like really psychedelic at times. And yeah, and it was done over a course of like a bunch of different sessions at different studios with like different groups of musicians. So like some of the sound very different too. Like you can tell like, oh, this is one where she had more of like the traditional folk band backing her, whereas this is the one where like she had like the total like knob twitcher, button pusher, electronics guys just going nuts, like making the weedly woo sounds in the background. So.
Beautiful. It's good to see that record.
Yeah,
it's like a real mind expanding record. Like you listen to it and it takes you places.
Yeah.
Unless you listen to it too many times, right, Hazel?
All right, Hazel. What's your last first?
So last one, I had a couple options to choose from, but looking at the chat, I think the decision was made for me because it ties into somebody else's chat story.
Oh, really?
About I think the last record I showed maybe about a punk rock flea market at the Rotunda, and I'm wondering if this is the same punk rock flea market at the Rotunda that I'm about to talk about that I went to, because the first like real punk show that I went to that's like distinct from like a rock concert at a real venue or whatever was a punk flea market at the Rotunda in March 2001. Maybe the same one, maybe not. But
I was probably there too.
Right. I at the time I'd been to a couple of like concerts with my dad, and it was all right. I hadn't been to like a punk show yet, and I wouldn't have been allowed to go. But this one I kind of like wheedled my way in because I'm like, it's a flea market. Like there's going to be people selling stuff. It's fine. It's not going to be dangerous. It's in the afternoon. It's a flea market. Like what could possibly go wrong? So I was allowed to go in. I was allowed to stay for 1 hour. There were 2 bands that were supposed to play. One of which was Kill the Man Who Questions, who I did not get to see any of because I got pulled out way before they played. But I did get to see Anti-Product.
Yes.
And this was toward the their later era, like around the time this record came out, but a little later still, because they had like added a cello player at that point. Yep. I had never heard this band before. I had no idea what to expect. I had not been to this kind of show before, and also had no idea what to expect. The Rotunda was normal for me. I lived like a 10-minute walk from there. I walked by there like constantly, so it's a very comfortable setting, very same old neighborhood. But radically different show experience. No stage, no like security, none of that. You walk in and there's like all kinds of punks. Very different from like a rock concert or like a pop punk show. I had been to like one pop punk show before this. It was fun. But it didn't really make an impression on me the same way that this did, because I did catch like probably about half of Anti-Product set at it, and I hadn't heard anything that sounded like it before, and I hadn't physically experienced anything like it before because I was watching like up front, and you're there, and like the band is right there, and I got hit in the face by the singer's hair a couple times, and it's a completely radically different vibe in every way possible, and I liked the music, but I didn't actually like own any of their records for like years afterward because got to track them down. So when I bought this, it was fun because I recognized some of the songs on it, even having heard them like one time at that first show. It was like, oh yeah, this sounds familiar to me years later. So that was really cool. It's musically, it's like the earlier stuff was more like straightforward anarcho-punk, like 90s, but this is when they went in like a heavier direction. Some people would call it like emo crust. I'm not a big fan of that term, but it's like heavier, moodier, like anarcho-punk with not the cello yet, but you can kind of see where they're going with it, and also very political. They were kind of ahead of their time in a lot of ways because they had a lot of songs about like colonialism and like confronting internalized racism and all that. And like I remember reading people complain about that online at the time because I think like a lot of white punks in particular didn't want to hear it yet. And now that's like obviously something that people talk about a lot more, even in like non-punk circles. So still relevant. I wouldn't say that this is like a favorite record of mine, but it would definitely be in the upper tier of like important records just for the like effect that it had on me when I saw them and the way it affected my life after I bought the record and like learned the lyrics and all that. So not something I pull out super often, but really glad that it was like my first experience with this. As a self-roast, there were like all kinds of punk records and stuff for sale at this, and I bought a Rancid CD. So, because I knew I had heard them before. There was all this stuff where it's like, oh, that looks really cool, but I'm gonna play it safe. I have $10. I'm gonna play it safe and buy something I've heard before. I bought a Rancid CD and I listened to it a lot for like a month, and then I put it away and forgot about it.
Wow. So
this is Anti-Product.
Yeah.
Deafening sound of grinding gears. And no, there's no cello on that record, Paul. But it's a wicked record. Really great 90s crust.
Yeah, and there's not a ton of stuff that sounds quite like this. Like there's other bands that did the like moody cello stuff, but this I don't think it sounds exactly like any of them, and I think it holds up better than a lot of that.
The band from that time that like does the cello thing is Garmin Bogia.
Right.
I was thinking of Remains of the Day. Did they have?
Oh, yeah, they had a violin. Yeah,
violin. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. There was a whole bunch of them, and eventually it got to the point that I think they kind of like weren't that interesting. But there are some of the bands that had the like string instruments that I really like Wake Up on Fire, who I talked about on the one episode, who were like less crust and more sludge. They had one, and I thought it really worked. But that like kind of popped up really fast and then disappeared.
Yeah, I was at that show. I remember when that was like, a hot thing for a minute. And it was funny too, because this band's from, I think originally from Binghamton, New York, but shortly after they played Philly, I feel like almost the entire band moved to Philly. Like 4 out of 5 members or something. It was hilarious. Which is actually an effect that Philly has on a lot of people. Like when they come there and they're like, wow, look at this scene. So many people here.
One of my bandmates spent some time in Philly over winter and was like, I love Philly. I want to move to Philly now. Everything. It happens. It still happens.
It's dangerous,
It has Jay Collins.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what's not to like?
Yeah. He's actually back to booking fests again. He's doing something special this summer.
I saw.
Yeah.
I hear Philly still fucking shreds. I don't know. I've never been, but
Yeah, we got to
maybe it does. I don't know.
Been long enough. Yeah. Yeah, Mike, has he ever been a guest on the show? Jay Collins? Jay Collins from
I've got a story about that. Maybe I'll save it for after.
Yeah, the only problem is he's got a big mouth. He wouldn't shut up and let you stop.
All right.
Yeah, that fest is going to be like, I'm going to try to come back for that. And then the like Scorched Earth Fest in Vancouver is like a couple weeks after that.
Oh,
So I don't know
fuck.
for sure. I don't know if I'm gonna do both. Maybe.
Oh, I know that
Jet
one's
Set
a
Punk.
ripper. That one is a ripper.
Yeah.
So it's kind of replacing Have a Good Laugh in Vancouver right now because those guys are just a little too busy. So Tom took this on, and holy shit, what a festival! Sadly, it's the absolute polar opposite end of Canada for me. Because fuck, I would love to go to that show.
Well, I looked at my like bank statement and they cashed my passport application check, so I'm hoping that's a good sign.
Oh,
I got the pass before I got a passport, and now it's like,
Oh,
okay, now
no.
I have to do this.
No, I hit Have a Good Laugh a couple of summers ago. I saw like Chaotic Discord and Long Knife and
oh.
Homefront, a bunch of crazy bands. It was great.
Wow.
This is kind of like a follow up to that festival, and yeah, I wish. I got my work to send me out last time, and it was fantastic.
I remember that time. I remember that.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. I totally sent you the gig sheet. Yeah, you're right.
Nice.
All right, Matt. Last pick of the day. What you got? What's the last pick?
Last
Drum
pick.
roll.
I didn't mean to do this, but this is another Deranged Records release. I think these guys are just horribly underappreciated. Boston band. They did, I believe, 3 7-inches, this LP, and then one more 7-inch and broke up and have probably done a bunch of other bands. The first 3 7-inches are very kind of crust, D-beat, raw punk kind of stuff. This LP, they bring in a 6th member who is like a poet. And he does these like diatribes over the tracks and between tracks and kind of here and there. And it makes them better, strangely. Like it really, really works. And now this record, this was at the peak of when Deranged was like maybe one of the best hardcore labels going. So they probably pressed way too many of these things. Because now it's another cheap bin record. This is Brain Killer. Every actual state is corrupt.
Oh yeah, I remember that band.
Blown out, feedback drenched, raw punk D-beat from Boston. It absolutely destroys, and nobody gives a shit. Like this thing absolutely kills, and like between like these feedback, squealy, drenched songs, they've got kind of like a whorehouse of representatives thing where the guy just goes on these tangent rants about politics and society, and it's like spoken word, and then and the song rips in after like a 30-second kind of spoken poetry track.
Wow.
It is so fucking good. In fact, I have test presses of every one of their releases.
Wow.
I am scum, by the way. You should probably know that. But like, yeah, between 2000 and 2010, Boston noise punk, totally.
Yeah. Wow.
This thing kills, and you'll probably find it for $4.
Yeah,
I saw them in like 2010, and they were really
So-
good. But that period of like 2010 to 2014 was like such a slump era for me that there's a lot of stuff that came out then that like I know I would love,
Sorry,
but I totally ignored
2011.
at the time.
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was peak like slump era, like hardly going to shows, like super out of touch. So that's definitely worth a revisit.
They did, if I remember correct. Yeah, they did 2 7-inches, a lathe, this LP, and then another 7-inch, and it is just this noisy, it's squealy, feedback drenched raw punk. It is just killer, and again, like nobody cares, and it's so sad.
I care, Matt. I'm pretty sure I have all of those releases too. So
I hope you do.
I'm the
I
other
think
guy
I'm
who
like-
bought them.
If I see anything in the bins and it's on deranged, I usually pick it up. It's pretty reliable label. So if I see it, I'll
Is that
definitely.
another garbage truck?
Yeah, he forgot to. Yes, I think he's forgotten something. Forgotten to pick something up.
He heard people like the Suspiria theme, so he came back to play it again.
All right, that's it. It's all over. It's finished. We're done. That was a great episode. Amazing picks. Good, great stories.
Give yourselves all a round of applause. Those are some great picks tonight.
Give yourself a round of applause.
A lot of records I already own, so I know that's like some good picks there.
Cliff 4.75 on Discogs. Perfect. That's a good one.
All right. We're back next week. Of course we are. We're always back next week. Daniel's on the show again. Daniel's in the chat. Love Daniel. Diane Farris is coming back. Love Diane. She's such a character of the old New York veteran. And Dean Rispler of hundreds of bands, like in the New York City Dictators, Murphy's Law, the Homewreckers, the voluptuous Karen Black. All the bands. He's a great guy. Love Daniel. Love Dean. Love Diane. So it's going to be a great show next Friday, March 7th. Make sure you tune in. We're probably going to stick around for a little bit and confuse ourselves by talking about more records that we're going to think we talked about on the show, but we didn't talk about on the show. We talked about after the show. So we're going to sign off now. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay healthy and stay clean.